Trump supporters have a meme where they say, in reality, the machine wasn't after Trump, it was after you. Trump was just in the way. And I understand why they feel that way because, well, a lot of these companies, these media outlets, Democrats do target regular working class people, and the woke cult does try to get regular people fired from their jobs. But often the establishment machine was heavily focused on Donald Trump. The reality is they are after you, and they are also after Trump. Even though Trump is no longer president, they're still coming after regular working class people. They're still making claims about all this extremism, and they're still trying to put Trump in jail. At least at the state level, you have these AGs or you have these DAs trying to go after Trump's finances and find something he did that was criminal. And it's probably because they are scared Donald Trump may run again or will take control of the GOP and push through pro-Trump candidates. Well, with Trump out, they are shifting a bit of their focus. We're now looking at a story. Democrats ask cable and streaming providers about their role in spreading misinformation ahead of Capitol riot. This is a story about Democrats who are trying to strong-arm cable companies into banning Fox News, One American News, and Newsmax. They want to eliminate their political opposition. Why? It's not about Trump supporters. It's about populists. The establishment elites don't care if you're a Bernie Sanders supporter or a Trump supporter. They don't want you challenging their system. And I got to say, unfortunately for them, they're doing a really, really bad job. Bernie Sanders may have capitulated and started endorsing the Democratic establishment. Tulsi Gabbard did the same. Trump supporters aren't going to do it. They're revolting against the GOP. So naturally, the establishment machine is heavily targeting Trump and his supporters. But if Biden was the best they can muster, 2024 is going to get wild because there are populists on the left as well that don't like the Democrats. In fact, it seems like most of them hate the Democrats, and even Jacobin agrees with an article titled, "Everyone Hates the Democrats." The reality is, I think everybody hates Republicans too, and probably many Trump supporters do. What Democrats are doing with trying to strong arm these outlets into getting rid of Fox News, they're trying to nip their enemies at the core, at the root, ripping out all of these ideas so they can't spread. They want a monopoly on political ideology, and the only way to get it is to ban ideas they don't like and can't compete with. Now, are conservatives absolutely right on everything they say? Of course they aren't. Are populist right-wingers right all the time? No. But they do have a lot of good ideas and things that are worth protecting. And they're also the last line of defense, for the most part, in protecting Second Amendment rights. Many leftists also agree with Second Amendment rights, but the left has mostly unified with Democrats, so there's no reason for Democrats to go after them. This is also providing Democrats with the ability to rally a base. You see, the other is bad. Trump is a fascist. Supporters are bad. Therefore, we will keep fighting the boogeyman, so you must vote for us. Well, progressives are in many ways being duped by the Democratic Party because they're being told that populist right-wingers are scarier. The reality is, if the right and the left, the populists, actually came together, well, they probably agree on a whole lot more that the establishment doesn't want. Of course, Democrats were in favor of a lot of the stimulus stuff. Republicans were not, but Trump was. You see the problem? Is it for the people or for the establishment elites who want to play dirty politics, revolving door policies, and just get their buddies' jobs and maintain control of the system? It's unfortunate that the left doesn't see it, but the Democrats are going to start with conservatives, and then don't be surprised when they start banning the left. It's already happening. YouTube recently banned a ton of progressive YouTube channels. If the progressives don't speak up now, well, then they can forever hold their peace. Let's read the story from CNBC, but before we do, head over to timcast.com and become a member to get access to exclusive members-only podcast segments. We've got a bonus episode with one of the owners of Phoenix Ammunition talking about whether gun control could lead to armed revolt. Spoiler alert, we don't necessarily think so, but it's worth checking out. And another bonus episode with James O'Keefe. We set up timcast.com because, listen, they're trying to get Fox News banned from cable TV. How long do you think we're going to last on YouTube? Probably not forever. So becoming a member at timcast.com allows you to keep listening to our show and my content, even if I do get banned. And we are working to improve the site, so go and check it out. But don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let's get to the news. CNBC says, Democrats ask cable and streaming providers about their role in spreading misinformation of the Capitol riot. You see, what they're doing here is they don't necessarily go to these channels and say, you must ban Fox News. They say, you allowed misinformation to spread, which triggered, these far-right extremists into doing this. What are you going to do about it now? CNN writing that, well, TV providers should not escape scrutiny for distributing disinformation. Yeah, I guess I agree. I wonder when CNN is going to get banned for all of their ridiculous misinformation. But the strategy here is really simple. They claim we are not telling them to ban anyone. We're just saying you better take action or else. They make that veiled threat. You know what we're going to say about you. You better do something about it. It's resulting in a bit of a backlash, mind you, but let's read from CNBC. They say, Reps Anna Eshoo, a Democrat, and Jerry McNerney, also a Democrat, both from California, sent letters to top executives at AT&T, Verizon, Roku, Amazon, Apple, Comcast, Charter, Dish, Cox, Altice, Google parent Alphabet, and Disney-owned Hulu on Monday, urging them to address misinformation on their services. They linked disinformation and conspiracy theories to the radicalization of people who stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th as lawmakers moved to affirm Joe Biden's victory. Quote, misinformation on TV has led to our current polluted information environment that radicalizes individuals to commit seditious acts and rejects public health best practices, among other issues in our public discourse, the lawmakers wrote in letters. Eshoo and McNerney asked the providers how they determined whether to carry a channel and how they attempted to manage the spread of disinformation and incitement of violence between the 2020 election and January 6th insurrection. Notice CNBC says insurrection definitively. Eshoo and McNerney identified Fox News, Newsmax, and One American News networks as channels that aired misinformation in the lead up to the riot and that have spread false information about COVID-19. The lawmakers also asked the companies if they plan to continue carrying the channels and why. You see, that's their attempt to get them pulled. My friends, conservatives don't fight back. Why? Well, many of them, unfortunately, have principles. And I'm saying unfortunately rather facetiously. What that means is, as a moderate liberal individual myself, the left would never want to accept it because it challenges the cult and Democrat orthodoxy. I believe in free speech. Many conservatives do as well. And on that principle, we don't want CNN banned. We don't want ABC banned. Or how about when Brian Williams lied about that helicopter or whatever happened? All they did was move him to MSNBC from NBC News. Oh, yeah, a transfer. We still don't want them banned because we believe in the right to free speech and we think their ideas should be challenged. They're not playing the same game, however. They're going for the throat while we're sparring peace. This is what it is. Moderate liberal types, disaffected liberals, conservatives, all those defending free speech, libertarians. We're sparring as though it's a friendly match. And we're just going to, fence a little bit until we get a point. They're playing with a real sword, attempting to go for the throat, trying to get the game. They're trying to end everything. No reasonable debate. No real politics. They just want to shut down their opponents once and for all. Like I mentioned, CNN literally wrote an article claiming that Fox News and Newsmax both delivered, to my home and by company are complicit. New Jersey State Assemblyman Paul Moriarty texted a Comcast executive on Thursday. What are you going to do? Ban our political opponents. I assure you it's only going to get worse. This is an attempt to go after the information apparatus, but trust me, they're still going to go after you, individuals, anybody who dare oppose the establishment political machine. When Tucker Carlson called him out, they claimed he was exaggerating and lying, and CNN said, that's not true. We're not trying to do that because they're lying to you. How simple is it? When Democrats literally write to all of these providers saying, why are you still carrying them? Oh, we never told them to get rid of them. No, but we know what you are doing. Then they lie. And unfortunately, people believe those lies. Then they come around and claim that me or Tucker Carlson or other people are the ones who are really lying just to confuse and manipulate. I've said this before and I'll say it again. The easiest way to figure out who's telling the truth, well, I will tell you this. You need to watch CNN. CNN should not be banned. You need to know what Oliver Darcy and Brian Stelter are saying to understand them. You will come to find, if you have an open mind and watch all news, Brian Stelter and Oliver Darcy are liars. They're manipulators. They publish fake news, and then they claim they're the ones fighting the fake news. Now, if you watch Brian Stelter, you'd see his segment where he said, don't watch Fox News. Anyone who's trying to tell you not to absorb information and make judgments for yourself is manipulating. I will always tell you, watch everyone. I actually got a lot of flack from conservatives because I'm always shouting out progressive YouTubers. And they're like, why don't you shut out any conservatives, Tim? Okay, so make sure you watch people like Kyle Kalinske. You can check out Steven Crowder. You can watch libertarian types, people like Styx Hexenhammer. You've got to watch everyone. And I'll especially say, don't just watch my channel because I get things wrong. I get them wrong a lot. If you watch everyone and you do a little bit of that digging for yourself, you'll come to find the truth is closer to the middle. And you'll probably find the mainstream media lies all the time. I recently had I did a segment on my other channel where Pointer, which is the institute that actually determines who's allowed to be a fact checker on Facebook, for the most part, claimed that I published a tweet that said the election was rigged. I did no such thing. I said that Time Magazine said the election was rigged. I'm sorry, not rigged, fortified. I was being snarky and a bit facetious or sarcastic or whatever. They tried claiming it was my post that made the claim, and they were outraged that fact-checking actually confirmed I was telling the truth. I was just being a snarky and referencing this Time Magazine article, but they were shocked and outraged. Uh-oh. Independent users who could fact-check the article deemed my tweet to be not misleading, and that was bad for their narrative crafting. They are lying. Well, one outlet, this is hilarious, who wrote about this, I asked them for a correction, and my respect, they corrected the article, showing my tweet and accurately representing it, saying that I was referencing Time Magazine, and here's what I said, but it essentially negated the entire premise of the article. You see, the only reason the fake news succeeded in it, or the only way the fake news would work in this regard is if I wrote something that was legitimately false, and then they were outraged, the machine allowed it to be, passed off as true. But what I wrote was true. The establishment media doesn't like the fact that regular people decide for themselves. So I'll tell you my prediction, to be honest. I'm fairly optimistic in this regard. Democrats are trying. It ain't working. Check this out. Disclose.tv says, just in, acting legal advisor of the FCC reacts to calls from congressional Democrats to ban Fox News, OAN and Newsmax. Here's the letter. They wrote today, 2 senior Democrats on the House Energy and Commerce Committee targeted the newsroom decisions of a handful of media outlets. They did so by sending letters to 12 cable providers and other companies that carry these outlets. FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr provided the following response, quote, today, 2 senior Democrats on the House Energy and Commerce Committee selectively targeted a handful of news media outlets for their coverage of political events. By writing letters to the cable providers and other regulated entities that carry these news media outlets, the Democrats are sending a message that is as clear as it is troubling. These regulated entities will pay a price if the targeted newsrooms do not conform to Democrats' preferred political narratives. This is a chilling transgression of the free speech rights that every media outlet in this country enjoys. Debate on matters of public interest should be robust, uninhibited, and wide open. More speech is better than less. Yet the concerted effort by Democrats to drive political dissent from the public square represents a marked departure from these First Amendment norms. A newsroom's decision about what stories to cover and how to frame them should be beyond the reach of any government official not targeted by them. To the House Democrats that use their official letterhead to launch this inquiry, I would say this. Your demand to know the moral principles that guide a private entity's decision about what news to carry cannot be reconciled with bedrock principles of free speech and journalistic freedom. I call on my FCC colleagues to join me in publicly denouncing this attempt to stifle political speech and independent news judgment. Let's talk about fake news, my friends. How about it? In a tweet from Jonathan Chait, he said, I've revised upward the odds that Russia starting manipulating Trump in 1987, but I've also revised downward how much it would matter if it could all be proven. Glenn Greenwald responded, permit me to observe once again that those who spread deranged conspiracy theories most persistently, shamelessly, and destructively are not QAnon or 4chan teenagers, but members of the corporate press, which want everyone else silenced. He then tweeted this tweet from Chuck Ross, said, You revised upwards because of Yuri Shvets? That's even more embarrassing than the original take. Okay, let me give you some context here. Jonathan Chait once claimed on MSNBC that Donald Trump was a Soviet agent or asset. I am not kidding. Not just Russia, the Soviet Union. You know what that means? The Soviet Union dissolved in what, like 1990, was it? 91? I don't know the exact date. Forgive me for not knowing my history. I should know this. But the Soviet Union dissolved. If Trump was an asset of the Russians since 1987, that's the Soviet Union. What is Trump, a KGB agent? Okay, fine. The argument is that Trump was groomed by the Soviet agents and intelligence agencies, and that he's still loyal to the Russians or they have dirt on him or something. Sure. Jonathan Chait, who writes for New York Mag, came out and doubled down, saying it's even more likely. You want to talk about unhinged conspiracies? CNN, the New York Times, and all of these outlets, Washington Post, publishing fake news about Russia, that Trump was an asset of Russia, that Trump colluded with Russia. It was insane. And we believed it. Not entirely, and not everybody. But we were listening intently, saying, well, let's let the investigation play its course. I know I was. Many Trump supporters saying it was stupid, absurd, and conspiratorial, and they turned out to be right. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Now these same entities are demanding that other outlets be banned. And that's the point I was making earlier. You want to know who's lying to you. It's the ones who are trying to silence their opponents so they can't speak. And the ones who are telling you to listen to everyone, including our political rivals, are the ones being honest. I love that quote from Game of Thrones, where Tyrion Lannister said, when you cut out a man's tongue, you're not proving him wrong. You're only proving you're scared of what he might say. And that's the most important point in all of this. I don't want any of these outlets banned. I don't want Democrats banned. But they want you banned. They don't want you to be able to be proven right. Which is why I brought up the Pointer story. They had to falsely frame what my tweet was, because the reality is they were losing control of narrative building, and they need to control the flow of information. In that Time magazine article I referenced, they claimed that the shadow campaign to fortify the election controlled the flow of information. If people don't know the truth, well, then how can they vote properly? That is antithetical to journalism. And we saw it. Big tech companies banned the story about Hunter Biden, even though it was true. And then after the election, published it all saying, yeah, we know it was true. Now, what we're seeing here is an attempt to go after Trump supporters and populists at the root, but it's not the only thing happening. It's essentially two segments rolled into one. But I did feel that there was a big overlap. Like I mentioned, people like to say they weren't really going after Trump. They're going after you. Trump's in the way. That's not so much true. They are going after Trump. They're going to continue going after Trump. The Supreme Court is going to allow Donald Trump's, let me see if I have it. Here we go. Supreme Court denies Trump's final bid to block release of financial records. Now, I know this is a bit of a jump, but hear me out. This is important. Trying to get Fox News, OAN and Newsmax banned is an attempt to stop the ability of Trump to have supporters. If people can go to Fox News or a channel like this one, that's why I shout out timcast.com. If people can come here and learn the truth, or at least an alternate viewpoint, then they might actually become Trump supporters. They need to stop that from happening if they want to maintain control. But the other thing they're trying to do, I think they're going to try and prosecute Donald Trump. Now, I wasn't so bullish on that back during the election and before the election, but I think we're heading in that direction now. I'm not convinced it will be at the federal level. It will likely be at the state level. But the Supreme Court certainly does not have Trump's back. The former president's accountants will give the records he has spent years trying to shield to New York prosecutors. At the state level, zealous New Yorkers may very well come after Donald Trump, and they could actually charge and prosecute. This is the reason I think Trump, the feds ultimately didn't go after Trump. They did try impeaching him. I think if Joe Biden and the new AG, maybe it'll be Merrick Garland, tried to file charges against Trump, and they still may, but we'll see, it would set horrifying precedent and it would scare a lot of Americans that they were going after a political rival. Although the Democrats probably would enjoy it, a bunch of regular Americans would be like, no, this is wrong. So they went the impeachment route. They tried to impeach Trump, citing the 14th Amendment, in an effort to make it so he could not run for president again. They failed. Now, what do we see next? The Supreme Court holds a hearing, denies Trump's bid to block the release of his private financial details, and now prosecutors will have them. And I tell you this, as most people know, there's too many laws, and all it takes is an accusation. And it's very difficult to prove your innocence, especially when it comes to financial issues. There was one story where they tried claiming that Trump falsified tax documents by claiming the free capacity of one of his buildings was more than it really was in an effort to not pay as much taxes. What they didn't tell you is that there were different filing requirements, and they weren't the same. Documents. Basically, what had happened was Trump said that like 90% of his building was occupied when he was talking to a bank. And then he said 96 was occupied when he was talking to the federal government, something like that. I don't have the full details. But the general idea is one was a reference to how much money he could possibly make in terms of rental capacity. And the other was a reference to not necessarily the same thing, but occupied space. Long story short, telling a bank, we don't think we can make money because this is being used, so we can't rent it out. Then telling the federal government, we're using this in a way that doesn't make money, so it's occupied space. They're just different arguments. The media tries manipulating the narrative because they're going after Trump. Long story short. Well, now we got more bad news. The Supreme Court kills Pennsylvania mail-in voting case and post-election lawsuits. Pennsylvania Republicans, not Trump, had filed claiming that the changes to the election laws were unconstitutional. Supreme Court said, it's moot. Election's over, resulting in Justice Thomas being very, very angry. Thomas basically said, refusing to hear this is inexplicable. If we don't rule on this case before the election and we say afterwards it's moot, then when do we ever explain to people what election rules are? But there's a reason why I bring this up. Justice Thomas may be the only principled person on the Supreme Court because what he's saying is absolutely true. And anybody saying otherwise is lying to you. And that includes every other Supreme Court justice. I mean, think about it. The court needs to hear a case when there's a dispute. If before the election they say you have no standing because nothing's happened, during the election count, they say it's too late. And then afterwards say it doesn't even matter anymore. When do you get to actually file your court case? Which brings me to the main point. The establishment was never on Trump's side. And they're certainly not now. The Supreme Court will allow Trump's private financial details to go to a prosecutor. They're going to find a reason to come after him. They don't have his back. Kavanaugh does not have Trump's back. He was a federal judge under Bush, and Trump just did what McConnell and many Republicans wanted him to do. And then the Republicans just basically stabbed him in the back. It's not just about you. They don't like you. They don't like the rabble. They don't want regular people having say, but they really don't like Donald Trump either. All of this is part of the same. I don't want to say it's necessarily a conspiracy or anything like that. Actually, I'll say the opposite. Standalone complex. That's typically how I describe it. What's happening, in my opinion, is the establishment elites have disdain for regular people. They look down on them as dumb rabble. They view themselves as better men. With Donald Trump, they don't like him. They're not going to side with him. With you, they're not going to side with you either. Democrats want to target Trump and Trump supporters as a boogeyman to rally their base. They also want to make sure there can't be new Trump supporters. Eventually, then, the whole Overton window will shift super far to the left, and the Democrats today, like Pelosi, will become the conservatives of tomorrow. Right now, progressives and many far leftists literally refer to Pelosi as far right or right wing. They say Joe Biden is a Republican. That's how they view things. That's what the establishment would prefer, I suppose. And don't get me wrong. I think ultimately they'll cut off the progressives as well. But that's where things are kind of drifting. In the end, we have the story from The Hill. Almost half of Republicans would join Trump party, according to a poll. The Republican Party may be falling apart completely because people support Trump, not the GOP. The GOP is awful. What are they really doing? NBC News says the GOP is rapidly becoming the blue-collar party. Here's what that means. What it means is they're not going to line up behind people like Mitch McConnell, who will sell them out to international interests and not defend the working class. It means that union labor is going to start questioning what the Democrats have to offer. And then Donald Trump will step in and claim total control of the GOP. This from Axios. That's what they say. Trump to claim total control of GOP. A longtime advisor called Trump's speech a show of force and said that message will be, I may not have Twitter or the Oval Office, but I'm still in charge. Payback is his chief obsession. They say in his first post-presidential appearance, Trump plans to send the message next weekend that he is Republicans' presumptive 2024 nominee with a vice grip on the party's base, top Trump allies tell Axios. Let's bring this whole segment together to help. They seem different, right? Talking about Thomas and SCOTUS. And let me wrap it all up. A couple of years ago, Alex Jones got banned. Milo Yiannopoulos. Paul Joseph Watson got banned. Laura Loomer got banned. Many on the right who are some of the most vocal and prominent and powerful Trump supporters were eliminated from social media. This is a violation, of course, of their free speech on principle. And the left said, but my private business. Since then, they've continued to do it. Without this exuberant and vocal support, Trump, well, he probably lost out quite a bit. Like I mentioned, many people didn't know about Hunter Biden because Twitter suppressed it. Reddit also banned the hub for Trump support, the Donald. The Donald was one of the most prolific progenitors of memes, according to MIT Tech Review. They banned them. 4 months before this ban, the Donald created the Donald.win, which is now called Patriots.win. That's the website. Yet 4 months after they left and had almost no posts, Reddit said, oh, but they're breaking the rules, so we have to ban them now. But they weren't posting anything. You will not convince me that people who abandoned a forum were breaking the rules 4 months after they abandoned it, and then you had to ban them. No, I'm sorry. The CEO of Reddit said they could swing an election. Then he bans one of the presidential candidate's biggest platforms, his biggest support bases. Again, I think all of these individuals are acting in such a way because they hate Donald Trump. Severing the lines of communication has always been the point. But they're not just trying to do that. They're trying to do everything in their power to stop Trump from ever running or winning again. That means they may have banned prominent high-profile Trump supporters, but it wasn't enough. They now have to get rid of Tucker Carlson, Newsmax, OAN, eventually channels like mine. We're all on the chopping block and the purge is happening. Don't get me wrong, they'll come after progressives too, but right now the bigger threat is Trump running again. So long as Trump exists, they can convince and trick left populists into supporting Joe Biden. And it worked. Look at all those people eating it up. And now Joe Biden's going back on like everything he said, basically. Okay, not everything. He's definitely pushing some things that progressives are happy about. So there you go. The progressives preferred Biden over Trump, but now Biden's going to do everything in his power and the Democratic establishment and the media to go after the left as well. You'll get crony shill leftists. The next thing they did was impeachment. Impeachment didn't work. Now they're going to try criminal prosecution. And the Supreme Court is not protecting Donald Trump. Well, maybe Trump doesn't deserve the protecting, but Trump fully intends to stay in control of the GOP. And it seems like he's going to run again in 2024. He said he would before. It seems like he will now. Everything the Democrats will be doing, and their allies in media and their faux progressive allies, will be to shut down any ability for the right to organize. These people just simply won't disappear, though. Trump supporters, conservatives, and people on the right won't simply cease to exist. Without the lines of communication, they'll start making their own. Parler, for instance. Take a look at what happened with Parler. They nuked that platform as well. I'm actually fairly optimistic because I think the establishment is failing. The best they could muster was Joe Biden, and he's struggling. They have no unified message. What they're doing is not working. Censorship is backfiring, and trying to ban cable channels is just way too extreme for anybody. It's not going to work. I don't think so. Now, there are bigger issues with Antifa and, the far left for sure. But maybe this is just once the Democratic establishment is gone, once they truly lose control, there'll have to be some kind of, correction, as it were, where people start to have real conversations again and figure out that as long as we, fight for the things that we agree upon, we'll probably be okay, and you do your thing, we'll do ours. Or maybe it will lead to absolute chaos. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe the establishment elite is trying to prevent the chaos, but I'm sorry. I just don't believe that. They might argue they're the good guys fighting against global catastrophe and evil Trumpism in the far right. Sorry, not buying it. They recently came out and said Muppets were racist or something. No, y'all are nuts. You're pushing a cult. a cult ideology of extremist dogma that results in violence and hatred, divide and conquer. I want unity. I want to break bread and talk business with some leftists and with people of all different backgrounds. Leftist identitarianism of the Democratic establishment is making things worse. So, of course, they'll come after those who push against it. And we'll see how that plays out. So far, it doesn't seem to be going their way, but I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. tonight, live at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Make sure to check out the show because we take your comments in the super chats and we read them and we answer questions. Again, thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all tonight at 8 p.m. youtube.com/TimCastIRL.